further analysis on the story and bring in Alexander Cooley, who is the Claire Tao Professor of Political Science over at Columbia University. He's also an Academy Adjunct faculty member at Chatham House. He joins us now live from New York. Alexander, good to have you on the show. I'll get to the developments on the battlefield in just a bit, but I want to get your thoughts on the latest Russian military leadership shakeup. General Valery Gerasimov is now in charge of the troops in terms of the front lines in Ukraine. The fact that President Putin is pretty much burning through top military commanders, what does this tell you?
Well, I think it tells us that he's unhappy with the general course of the war and that he continues to be obsessed with micromanaging at the field level and trying different commanders, being involved in tactical analysis as well as the broad strategy, and trying to shake things up after encouraging, quite frankly, some factionalism amongst the Wagner group, amongst the military, and of course, before that, the security services. So usually when you change your commander, things are not going well.
Since you mentioned the Wagner group, I want to ask you about that. I mean, when you look at sort of the most recent battlefront developments, especially the fight for Soledar, you have a series, especially on the military front, the Russian army. You have a series of defeats. You could say that they're on the back foot. You have a mercenary group that's come up forward and basically painted a picture that the Russian military is, for lack of a better word, incompetent. The fact that you have these two competing groups, whether it's the official state military and a mercenary group, is this a potential complication, or how much of a liability is this for Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think you've really put your finger on the fact there are two battles going on, one between Russia and Ukraine and the other one internal. The one between Russia and Ukraine, this has been the first time that Russian troops, Russian forces have gained a victory. It's questionable whether it has been worth the type of manpower that they've thrown to secure Soledar. It's also questionable whether this actually will be a platform to then conduct further operations in Bakhmut. But symbolically, this was important, right? To stem the tide, this idea that Ukraine now had the offensive. But the internal battle within Russia might be just as interesting and also just as important. For Prigozhin and the Wagner group, this is an attempt to show that they actually have capability, that they can get things that are important done in highly visible targets secured. And there is not a lot of enthusiasm in the Russian military in terms of the kind of credit taking that Wagner has been engaged in.
You talked about a lack of enthusiasm by the Russian military. I've been coming across a lot of chatter on Telegram, essentially suggesting that President Putin might actually have to go to a second round of mobilization. That's where I want to pick up my questioning with you. A lot of your research looks into Central Asia. And the reason why I bring this up is I've come across a comment from a senior Russian official essentially saying, look, we have a whole bunch of residents who originate from Central Asia, which we've given Russian citizenship to. I think the number is about more than 500,000 in the last 5 years. These guys should go out and perform their patriotic duty. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing viewers' attention to this important angle. There are millions of Central Asian migrants from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan in Russia, and several 100,000 have been given citizenship over the last 10 years by the Russian Federation. We've had reports of recent both migrants and recent citizens being conscripted, being targeted. Overall, I think this is just going to add to the tension between Moscow and these Central Asian countries as to what the purpose of these sort of Central Asian relationships and security agreements with Russia are, if they are moving into this pool of labor bar migrants and recent citizens. But as you mentioned, Russia needs manpower. The way they are conducting this war, the way that they're concentrating a second mobilization, and of course, politically, drawing upon Central Asian conscripts will be far more acceptable to many Russian urbanites than expanding mobilization into the Russian general population of ethnic Russians.
Okay. Alexander Cooley, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us here on the NewsHour. I do appreciate listening to your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.